So I was just about to upload another video that I just recorded. But here's what I didn't like about that video, right? I was going to talk about a book that's name is In Cold Blood, and it's by Truman Capote. But here's what I did wrong in that video. I actually kind of censored myself because the book is talking about murderers, right? And I didn't want to say the exact word on YouTube, which is pretty trash. Like, why did I do that? It's not like I'm getting paid from these videos anyways. And the whole point of these videos is to show you guys how I think, or what I think about, or how I think about it. And by censoring specific words, it pretty much defeats the purpose of it. So from now on, I'll pretty much try to do some of the videos ideas again, but the main point is I'll stop doing that. I don't know why I did that. So pretty much everything that comes to my mind is what you will hear in this video and the videos that come on later. So here's pretty much the whole idea of this channel and why I wanted to do it, right? The purpose of it was to just show you guys what I think about and how I think about it by just thinking out loud. So everything I think, I just say it out loud. That's pretty much it. That's why you might hear some of my ideas being not well explained enough, or just I'll start with one idea and then just hop right over to another one, because that's how I think sometimes. So that's why I might not be the best at explaining stuff, because I'm not trying to explain it very well. All I'm doing is really trying to think out loud. That's the purpose, and that's the function of this video. What was I about to say? Yeah, the book. So I was currently, or at least 40 minutes ago, reading this book called In Cold Blood by Truman Capote. Now I'm almost done with the book. I have exactly 21 pages left from the book. But the point of the book that I wanted to discuss was that some people are lunatics, man. And they have imbalances with their head. Like, there talks about two criminals or two murderers who murdered a family of 4, and all they did that was the intention was to open a safe and get a lot of money from that family because they thought the family was rich. But in reality, what happened was the family indeed did not possess any money physically at their house at that time, or they never really possessed any money physically on their person. They usually just went to the bank and deposited money as soon as they could, right? That's how the family pretty much worked. And what these two killers did was, even when they figured that out and all they got from the house was $40, this was in the 1950s, by the way, all they got was $40, and they still decided to leave no witnesses, which was their original plan. And they killed all 4 members of the family for $40. So that's $10 per person. That sounds pretty crazy to me. Then later we found out that one of the guys didn't have the best childhood while the other had a good childhood. But a lot of people don't have good childhoods, man. And especially the other guy, he had a perfect childhood. like I don't get it, man. And I know why it happened, or why people like this exist, because they're literally born with imbalances in their head, or they just cannot show empathy or compassion to a lot of people. Like later on in the book, like 2 pages before what I'm reading right now, it talks about a guy called Arthur. He was on death row in the 1960s, but all Arthur, or at least what he did was, let me give you some background on him first. He was a college student. He was around 19, I think. And he was around 19. And his father was a farmer. They weren't too rich, but because his father was a farmer, he had land that was worth around $200,000. At that time, that's pretty good. Even now, that's pretty good money. But at that time, you have to consider 1960s, so that's even more money than now. And this is in America, by the way. So So this guy decides to, while he's in college, decides to murder all of his family by shooting them, and him being the only survivor, and then calling and having the audacity to call the police after, right? And when he called the police, he was like nonchalant about it, and he didn't even, like, he had the impression of not caring, and the police thought something was wrong, but they still uh, made sure to get his point of view while they were interviewing him. But they clearly found out that he was the one who actually did it later. But the main point was what they later found out, that he was schizophrenic, or at least they thought that is what he was in the 1960s. I don't know about research nowadays. That's what the book says, that he was schizophrenic, and the kind of schizophrenia he had was the simple kind. Now, what that pretty much was is that he cannot, when he thinks, right, or when he's thinking logically, he does not connect that to his emotions so at all. So when he was thinking logically, he was like, okay, or at least his thought of what logic was, in my opinion, even that's not logical. But let me first share what his logic was. His logic was, hey, let me murder my whole family so I can get the land for me, so I can buy cool whips and be rich now, right? That was his perspective, or his logical so-called perspective. And he never connected he didn't even have the ability to connect the emotions with it, which were that this is my family and they care about me, or I care about them. He never had that side which us normal people do, of connecting emotions with a lot of our thoughts. And then later on, we see this next point that I'm about to bring up, when he's talking to another death row inmate called Dick, and he talks about, and Dick's like, hey, I want to get out of this death row. But his perspective, or Arthur, the guy who killed his family, his perspective was that he literally did not care about his life, dude, or anyone else's life, to be honest. Like, he was like, okay, if I die today, I die today. If I die tomorrow, I die tomorrow. If I live, I live. That's all. Like, he literally did not care about the value of life. So knowing that there are people like that, it's pretty scary. It's not scary, but it is scary. It's pretty scary to think about. That you might be walking around and the person you're meeting, you might never know what's wrong with them, but they could have a whole different side to them that you never know. Now, this specific point was also... This specific point also brought up another question in my head, that do I actually know anyone who might have like a whole psychopath, like who might be a psychopath or might be a narcissist, and I don't even know about that? You see what I'm saying? Like, do you guys know of any people like that? Which is kind of weird to think about. Like, you might be even talking to this person every day, but at night they might have a whole different agenda about what they want to do with life. And that agenda might not be the most morally correct thing to do. By the way, if you want to read this book, I'll say it again. It's called In Cold Blood by Truman Capote. This was one of the physical books, or like one of the physical books that I read. Usually I listen to audiobooks, but I tried to read more nowadays. But the point is, before I discuss the point of this book, let me discuss something else. If you want to read this book, I recommend it, but I'll recommend some other books. I'll recommend some better books that you should probably read. And if you want to read this book, yeah, go for it. It's not a bad book. But this book was actually appointed to me by my English class, so I have to read it. It was required. But what was my point? Yeah, let me give you some other references, or like some other books you should probably read. I think one of the best ones that come to my mind is a book called The Richest Man in Babylon. Now my math teacher told me about this because I asked him, "Yo, give me some books for me to read," and he's like, "Okay," and then he told me to read this book. It's so basically what the book, The Richest Man in Babylon, is about is finance and how to invest, right? But the way they do it is very, very good. So the way they do it is the book takes setting in ancient Babylon, and you're pretty much reading through the perspective of people asking or people trying to inquire how to be rich from the richest man in Babylon who used to be poor, and then he worked his way up to the top. And or like the people who he grew up with are now asking him, like, how did you do it? And he tries to help them out. And there's other values in it too, like him testing his son and see if he actually deserves his money, and he does that through a very good way too. So I recommend reading that book 100% first. Then another book you should probably read, that's more of a self-help book. This one's more about finance, although it doesn't give you incredibly specific ways of how to finance. The general practices are there. The richest man in Babylon. The next book that I'm about to discuss is about productivity. It's actually called The Productivity Project. Now, for this book, I would recommend this book. I've read this in audio form, or I've listened to it on audio form, and it's actually a pretty good book. I don't remember who it's by, but pretty much all it talks about is how to be more productive, how to know where you're spending your time. It also has a couple exercises to know your priorities, know your goals, and to try to spend as much time on that, or try to work as effectively on that, and then try to eliminate wasted time on other activities that are not as important. So definitely give The Productivity Project a read too while you have time. I guess the last book, if you're into entrepreneurship or into just or you're just fascinated by the idea of not working a lot and just having a lot of free time and not become a corporate slave to your boss, I guess then the book I would recommend is The 7-Hour Work Week. Now what the 7-Hour Work Week does is no. Oh, okay, I said it very wrong. It's called The 4-Hour Work Week. The 4-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss. You probably already heard about this book, but it's actually an amazing book. The 4-Hour Work Week, not the 7-Hour Work Week. But read the 4-Hour Work Week though, it's mad good. All it talks about is a couple of practical ways and a couple of general ways on how to weigh out the consequences and the benefits of starting a business or negotiating with your boss to have less hours. Or some people, it also talks about having VAs, which are virtual assistants, to try to automate parts of your life that you don't need to necessarily. Wait, let me try to think of the word. Necessarily, yeah. So get VAs or virtual assistants to try to automate parts of your life that are not necessarily required for you to do. So for example, just to read, like for example, if you're work in the office right all day, you should probably try to get done with your work as fast as possible, and then just waste your time, or if just try to negotiate with your boss to try to get out of your work as soon as you do all, like get out of work and go home as soon as you do all of the day's requirements that's available to you. If he doesn't agree with that, just go literally go at your desk and start learning a new skill so you can quit that job and get your own business or something where you don't have to worry about a boss. But the main point of VAs was, or virtual assistants was, that you can automate a lot of parts of your professional life, which is like, for example, if you have to answer emails or try to make up a schedule, you can just pay someone like $8 an hour in another country, and they're gonna work perfectly for you and try to hook up all of your schedule. There's websites that are credible, and now you don't have to waste another extra 30 minutes or maybe even an hour just figuring out your schedule, getting business meetings done, getting looking at all the emails, trying to take away the spam emails from the real ones. So that's all the stuff that can just be taken care of. Like, there's other values or the other points that the 4-hour work week also talks about, but that's a pretty good book. So I guess all those books you probably should get a reading into. Now, my boy on YouTube, he doesn't know me, but like one YouTuber I love to watch is Elijah Long. Yeah. So what he does is he talks about a lot of stuff that I talk about, but it's more in video format, and there's some more in shorter video formats. If you want to listen to him, 100%, if you want to like go watch his videos, 100% do that. It's much better than mine for right now, to be honest. But we're not trying to make the same kind of content anyways. So there's a different perspective you can get from both of us. But that's not the point. The point is that he makes incredible videos, and definitely watch his videos. But one of the things he talked about was read. Read. You should be reading. You should be trying to read as much as possible. And hey man, don't always read self-help books, because guess what? A lot of the self-help books, they talk about a lot of stuff that you already know, or it's common sense pretty much. Just think about it yourself and start doing that stuff. Like, for example, a main thing that the productivity project was talked about was just don't waste your time on pointless stuff. Well, you already knew that. You don't be a dumbass and waste your time. You already knew that yourself, right? So you definitely probably didn't need to read that section of the book. So sometimes reading self-help books might not even be the best idea. Try to read some fiction sometimes too, because what fiction does is it gives you a different perspective on life that you don't have right now, or like some other kind of genre that may not be self-help books. Him saying that was actually very beneficial for me, because usually I'm the guy who's like, okay, self-help books, these are definitely gonna help me out, but the point is, most of the stuff they talk about is common sense, dude. Or maybe it's too vague for my own life, so I have to think about my own life anyways. So why am I reading their book in the first place? Like, instead, what you gotta do, or one of my friends talked about this too, was if you're interested in a subject, for example, if you're interested in coding, right? Get a coding book, right? Get a coding book. If you're interested in history, get a history book. You don't gotta get a self-help book all the time, right? And if you just want to have some someone else's perspective on how they imagine stuff and how their views on life is, the best way to probably do that is read fiction, dude. Read fiction. So that's all the stuff you gotta think about. Is maybe you might, or for me this was actually the case, maybe self-help books isn't the best thing for you. But that's all of that is some good lessons I hope you take away, or I hope I take away from this video, or this part of the video. I hope you have an amazing day. I think it's like 9 something at night right now. I'll see you guys later.